27th of October, 1981. Cold fog clings to the platform. Daniel Hart steps off the night train with a cardboard box of Bibles. He is a CIA courier on Operation Silent Prayer. He sees the customs kiosk lit behind glass and the slow line forming. The box rides heavier than paper. Inside, hollowed pages cradle prototype microchips bound for missionaries across the border. His cover is faith. His cargo is silicon. Ahead are uniforms and questions. He shifts his grip, falls in with the travelers, and counts the steps to the gate, knowing one opened book could end the run. He took the church supply cover because it gave him a reason to move boxes without story or shine. The brief had been clear. Be dull, be steady, be a fixture on a schedule. He signed the forms that made him a volunteer attached to a warehouse that sent out scripture and candles and cheap paper icons. He wore the same jacket, kept the same satchel, learned the same tram stops. Predictable paths calm busy eyes. Predictable errands do not invite help. A box of books belongs in a lap or on a hip. It belongs to someone like him. The goal, as he understood it, was small and exact. Move tiny runs of prototype microchips to field partners who knew the next set of hands. Missionaries would pass them again, to trusted technicians who could use them inside the Iron Curtain. He did not ask what the chips could do. He did not know who had designed them or which lab had paid for them. His part was the lane between the bindery and the first church storeroom, and then the rail to the border on a fixed day. Beyond that, he was not supposed to know. In Vienna, he met the cutout in a back room that smelled of paper dust and hot glue. The bindery contractor had done the work before he arrived. The cartons were taped. The spines were neat. The edges looked clean. Compartmentation meant he did not break seals or ask how the hollowing was done. He ran a thumb along outer seams, checked corners for stray glue, and looked for anything that said handwork to a curious inspector. He said nothing beyond the time and the count. He left at the minute he had set in advance. He chose his stock in that room because choice was a form of protection. Thin, plain cover editions invited the least handling. No gilded edges, no ribbons, no embossing to admire. He set 4 stacks aside and built one box from them. He bounced the carton once on his knee. It felt like paper. There was no strange shift or rattle. A clerk offered to add hymnals to firm it up. He shook his head. More items meant more surfaces to touch, more pages to flip, more questions to answer. He crumpled brown paper as filler and wedged it so the books would not slide. Labels were a choice too. Official stickers looked neat. They also looked like work. He taped a small handwritten inventory to one corner in his own plain script. A number, a title, a parish name. It would read like a local errand gone modestly astray. He kept the rest of the carton blank. On the tram back, he ran answers in his head until they came out flat and simple. Donation box sent to the wrong door. Warehouse mistake. I am moving them for the church. He kept one story. He remembered the guidance drilled into him. Avoid close talk, avoid added meetings, avoid anything that looks like planning. He fixed times and did not move them. The handoff chain took the most work to lodge in his head because it was 3 steps that could not be written down. Church warehouse clerk on a specific Tuesday. Missionary team lead on the Wednesday after, in the side hall, after morning prayers. Parish storeroom on Thursday when the custodian set out chairs. Each had a benign reason, each tied to a real task someone could recognize. The receiver at the end had a name he was allowed to know, Father Merck. He had a city, and he had a note that the chapel door stuck in cold weather. That was the confirm, that was what he would touch. He set his own road rules before he bought the first ticket. One train change only. No night crossings. No help from strangers, even if they were kind and even if his arms burned. 3 rules took away paths that could surprise him, and that kept his story straight. He carried no tools and no spares. If someone opened a book and saw what was not supposed to be there, he had nothing to fix and no way to hide. The plan then was to walk the box to a bin, leave it, and walk away. He did not like that thought. He accepted it anyway. He did small things to make his role look real. At the church supplier, he bought a box of tea lights and a roll of string with cash and tucked them where they would bulge his bag. He kept a folded parish bulletin in his coat pocket. He made sure the carton had scuff marks from the tram steps and not just clean tape from the bindery. He kept his passport where he could reach it without digging. He stayed in the mid-carriage near other people with luggage and kept his eyes on stations, not faces. The small habits kept him from inventing anything under pressure. From the tram window, he marked the first drop site he would use in Vienna, a modest church courtyard set back from the street. In the afternoon, there were parishioners who went in and came out with their heads down, and a volunteer who swept leaves between the benches. It was the kind of place where a missionary team could be one more group of helpers and not draw eyes. He counted 2 gates and a side door to a storeroom, and fixed which one he would take with the box. He set the hour to arrive when the sweep would be busy, and the front steps would have foot traffic. He would let momentum hide him and keep strangers' hands off his load. The hall is white and hard with light. He counts 3 inspection tables and past them, a side room with a metal door that sits shut like a throat. His box feels ordinary in his arms because it looks like paper and tape. That is the point. He keeps his eyes at clerk level and not on the shoulder boards. He runs his story again in his head, each part in order, each word trimmed. Church donation, local language, wrong city on the shipment. He says it inside his mouth to keep it even when he must say it for real. A uniformed man touches the carton with 2 fingers and then taps once as if he expects a hollow sound to betray him. The title stamped on the spines makes the man's brow lift. Hart answers with the small facts he prepared. The books are for a parish. The language matches the parish. The box was sent to the wrong warehouse, and he is carrying it on to correct the error. He keeps his voice low and plain. This is the kind of error anyone can see and fix. He chose editions with plain covers for this moment, so there is nothing to admire and delay them. The box goes onto a table. The officer spreads both palms across the lid and leans, testing weight as if weight had a story too. Hart holds his breath and watches the man's ring throw a thin line of light across the taped seam. There is no rattle because he packed brown paper tight in the gaps at the bindery. That work had been for this exact pressure. The man lifts his hands, and the tape keeps its seal without the tacky pull that would show new glue. Hart keeps still enough that his own sleeves do not brush the edge. A second man reaches in without looking and pulls one Bible at random. He flips pages with his thumb, quick, glancing at blocks of text he does not read. Hart notices the spine is not bent all the way back. It is the favor luck gives, but it is also the result he wanted from thin editions that lie flat. He keeps a reflex down, the urge to hold the cover for the man, to make the flip look easier. Helping would be intimacy, and intimacy invites more pages. He keeps his hands where they can be seen, fingers light on the strap of his satchel. The first officer asks why a foreigner is moving religious books. Hart has the next answer lined up. He repeats the clerk's name from the church warehouse and the parish address that matches the labels he used. He takes a folded note from his wallet that carries the same address in his own small script. The details are small and can be checked without a call. He had chosen a clerk who exists and a parish that sweeps its own steps, because facts like that give shape to a story the way a frame gives shape to cloth. He offers the paper and keeps the rest of the wallet closed. A protest breaks at the next table. Another passenger has been told to open a suitcase, and he refuses. The noise rolls the air and heads lift and tilt. Hart does not move into the gap that opens in attention. He stands in his place and lets the seconds pass so that if anyone looks back at him, they see the same man in the same pose. The second officer wraps the book's cover twice and listens. Hart hears the sound too, but cannot measure it. He keeps his hands flat and his face quiet. The metal door to the side room stays shut. He never lets his eyes touch it. A supervisor steps in from the end of the hall with a clipped note about the next train. Schedules slide, and he makes a pushing motion with his hand that says the line must move. This is where a choice he made days ago plays its part. Tight connections force small windows for scrutiny. The officer stamps Hart's entry form without pulling a second book free. Hart thanks him in the local language in the accent he has practiced into his mouth, so that the vowels sit where they are supposed to sit. He lifts the carton and walks at a normal pace toward the platform. No rush, no drag. On the train, he sees the marks where the officer's palms left moisture dark on the lid. He makes 3 small decisions in a row. He does not wipe the box because wiping is a gesture that admits worry. He does not look back down the car because looking back calls eyes forward. He does not change cars because movement creates a second trail where one is already enough. He sits with the box between his knees and places his ticket where it can be seen. The car hums and then slides. Only when the station roof edge moves away does the tremor leave his knee. He files what the moment taught. A random pull of one book is the most common check here. Seams and spines must pass brief handling, not deep tests. The weight must read as paper and nothing else. He notes the time of inspection in his pocket notebook with a mark he will remember for the debrief. He revises his next step without changing his watch. He will go to the parish storeroom door and not the rectory. Fewer faces, fewer words, fewer chances for anyone to ask for a second look. Small changes like that move across a chain. The calm walk off that platform becomes the next rule in how silent prayer moves a box. The parish hallway is narrow and warm, air thick with incense and old paper. He keeps to the side door that sticks, the one he was told to touch as a confirm. A volunteer waves him past with a bored glance. Father Merck is there in the back, coat off, sleeves rolled. The handoff is as brief as his plane of action allows. Courtesies only. The box goes to a low shelf in a storeroom where hymn folders lean and cardboard makes quiet towers. He notes the shelf sag, the sweep marks on the floor, the smell of wax. He does not stay to admire the chapel or ask after needs. He keeps his path dull, thanks the priest, and steps back into the street with empty hands and a list of times in his head. He hears the code hours later at a payphone that eats coins and gives nothing back. One ring. Silence. A second ring. That is the prompt to check the emergency channel. He takes a long walk in no pattern and then climbs to the safe flat that has a kitchenette, a narrow bed, and a radio no bigger than a deck of cards. He dials the receiver to a known sweep, the one that catches lab beacons if any are within a few blocks. The sound that meets him is a thin, regular chirp that does not belong to this neighborhood. Houses and streetcar lines do not make that sound. His training puts a label on it at once. It is the test mode some beacons use on a lab bench. The chirp is a coded pattern sent to show a device is alive before a technician starts deeper checks. His stomach turns hard because only one box he carried today could send that. The lab cradle should never have left a private table. He cannot call the parish. Voice to voice breaks his own rules and grows more lines that can be traced. He stands by the window and holds the receiver flat in his hand. He listens, counts, listens again. The chirp holds and then goes quiet for a minute and then returns as steady as a metronome. That pause points to hands on the object. Someone set it down, then lifted it, then set it down again. He does not guess at who or what they did. He keeps to what he can verify. The signal is present, it pauses, it resumes, and it sits where it should not sit. He thinks of the vans that sweep at random, and the way a handheld can find a tone if a guard knows to listen. There is a narrow window to remove the accident before a routine pass makes it more than that. He sets his answer in the space between midnight and first light. He will revisit the parish as a man fixing a small mistake in labels. He pulls a spare inventory tag from his kit and writes a parish name and an addition note that will read as an office error. He adds a plain cover Bible to his satchel as a decoy of the same print run. He lays out the path so he arrives when the groundskeeper props a door with a bucket and the morning group has not yet come. He sets no meeting. He will be one more helper who apologizes for a mix-up and then leaves. He does not sleep. He keeps the radio on the table and marks the chirp on his watch until the sky lifts a shade and he can move without calling eyes. At first light, he is back in the side corridor with a calm smile and a folded label in his palm. He says he needs a moment to correct an inventory mistake from the warehouse. The request is modest and concrete, so he gets a nod and a wave to the storeroom. He keeps his steps measured, his shoulders loose. The box sits where he left it. When he grips the side handhold and lifts an inch, he feels a faint vibration through the cardboard like a small insect trapped in a matchbox. It travels up the muscles in his forearm. That is enough to place the source within the stack. He does not unpack the lot. He takes only the top Bible from the noisy corner and feeds the decoy into its place, matching the press of tape and the lay of spines so weight and shape look unchanged. He eases the lid back and breathes out his first full breath since the payphone. Father Merck steps into the door frame, eyes curious but not hard. Hart holds to simple truth and keeps it short. The donation includes the wrong language addition. He will make it right. He adds no names, no companies, no second set of details. He asks to set the single book aside and is allowed to do it. He carries the suspect volume to a side pew under a stained window where the morning light is soft. With the priest watching, he offers a general note that some donations arrive with inserts like maps or study notes, and they should not be examined during a service or handled by children. It is guidance that reads as care for parish order. It is also a warning without wires or jargon. The priest nods once and moves on to his tasks. Hart leaves the rest of the box in place and lets the chapel door close behind him. He does not open the satchel on the church steps. He walks 2 blocks and waits at a tram stop where idle movement is normal. He lays the Bible flat across his knees, cover down, as if he were reading through leather. From a pocket he takes the small magnet tool his training issued for moments like this. He draws it slow along the back cover in a set path designed to trip the test beacon without exposing any part. Through the leather and the inner board he feels the vibration stall and then stop. He counts 10, then 20. No tick comes back into his hands. He locks the magnet into its sheath and tucks both items deep in the bag. The tram sighs up to the curb. He boards, rides 2 stops, and steps off into the flow without changing pace. Back at the flat, he brings the radio back to the sweep frequency and listens. The thin chirp that should not be there is gone. He writes the time, the address, the step-by-step, and the stop point into his notebook with small squares for each action taken. He lists cause and effect as plain as he can make them. A labeling or packing mistake at the bindery put a test mode unit into a live run. A helper likely touched a connector while shifting the stack. The signal bled into the open and could have been found. He drafts a message for the handling team that says, in firm lines, to remove bench beacons before fielding. He adds a second line to include a simple end-user card in each shipment. Do not press or pull anything inside the back cover. If something moves, set it aside and call the warehouse number printed on the label. He keeps the language clean and free of lab terms because lab terms do not belong in a parish. He sits for a time after the note is done and lets the pulse that drove his hand slow to normal. The chain held because a call pattern worked, a small tool did its job, and a cover story fit the door it needed to open. He does not praise himself. He files a rule where he will see it again. Lab habits cannot ride in field boxes, and the last hands to touch a thing must think like the first person who will open it in public. The mission is still simple on his end. Move a box, leave no seam that draws touch, but he can feel how one oversight spreads. This near signal will change what goes into the next carton and the one after that. It will make silent prayer quieter where it counts. He finishes the route without adding a single turn. The tram stops are the same. The pace is the same. The one train change remains the one train change. He does not cut through side streets or choose a new cafe to wait in because new choices breed new questions if someone later traces him. He keeps his ticket stub in his pocket and his notebook shut. He measures the risk as still live until the city line is behind him. Worry is not a plan, so he stays inside the plan he set. The quiet exit is part of the concealment. Days later, he sits in a secure room that smells like dry carpet and pencil wood and gives the sequence as clean lines, not a story. He ties the checkpoint moment to the random pull of one book, the palm on the lid, the quick flip. He ties the coded chirp to a packing lapse upstream that put a bench mode into a field box. In his notes, he links both to choices and training gaps. Predictable inspections shape what must be engineered. Lab habits must be cleared before anyone builds a box to move in public. He adds a page with recommendations. The first line is without flourish. Sacred objects should not be used as concealment. He writes it that flat because the weight sits in the words already. He lists the reasons that fit both risk and mission. If exposed, the fallout would strike beyond one shipment. It would land on a faith and the people who carry it. The cover would not survive a public test. He keeps himself out of it. He asks for a clean break from devotional covers so that tradecraft does not pull on belief to hide its work. He sketches a redesign in principles and leaves the choice of shapes to others. He asks that covers shift to commonplace household things with no symbolic weight and no built-in reverence. He keeps the memo free of examples so it cannot date itself. To meet the last-mile weakness he saw, he drafts a small card for end recipients in simple language. It carries plain rules and a phone line. Do not press, do not pry, do not test. If in doubt, set aside and call the courier. The card avoids terms from the lab. It reduces accidents without teaching how the concealment works. He frames the lab fix as a factory step, not a field task. Bench beacons and default chirp modes must be stripped before any unit gets near a binding or a box. He puts his own late-night radio sweep on one line as evidence of what a tone can do in the wrong room. He notes that if the upstream step is done, a courier does not need to carry a magnet tool or count a pulse in his bones at a tram stop. He asks for a sign-off at the pack table that says test modes are off and cannot be turned on by touch. He circles back to movement and the checkpoint. Tight but plausible connections helped him because they created time pressure that pushed inspection towards speed. He writes that the effect is real and useful, and he adds a caution that it should not become routine. Patterns go stale. He records the officer's handling pattern as a standard to design for. One item pulled, a quick leaf through pages, a palm across the lid to read weight. He adds the lesson not to build a concealment that requires long admiration or tricks that work only if someone lingers. Speed is the test. When the review group meets, he gives what he has and listens. The minutes he later reads set the change in ink. Operation Silent Prayer will be shut in its original form. Shipments will move under different covers with fewer symbolic risks. He feels relief that sits deep and quiet, not about equipment saved, but about names not spoken in a police office because of what he carried. Weeks on, a cut-out report tells him what he needed most to know. Father Merck is still at his parish. The storeroom holds ordinary books in ordinary use. The near signal left no trace that the state could see. The new guidance moves through the building in small briefings, small loads, clear end-user rules, cover stories that do not touch faith. He hears a trainer read a sentence from a memo he wrote without using his name. He sits in the back and takes his own notes, then files them with the rest. Soon there is another route on his calendar. He puts the same calm on, chooses simple stories, acts on plain facts, and accepts again the weight of choices made elsewhere that he must carry through a door. From his narrow vantage, he sees one change hold. The text still moves, but the covers grow quieter, and the chance of harming the very people it is meant to help drops with each box he does not have to bless. Hart leaves without notice, carrying only a tighter set of rules and a quieter cover shaped by the near signal. He learns that silent prayer ends in its first form, that the chips will move under different skins, and that Father Merck keeps his parish and his books. What remains to him is a clean set of steps at the pack table and a short card for end users, repeated in small briefings that make accidents less likely. His name stays off the pages, But the lines he wrote outlive the run and guide later shipments across the same borders with less harm and more care.